Hello, True Crime Stories family. Welcome back. There have been significant developments this week. Jordan Willis is currently in rehab, and one of our viewers told us that he may be cooperating with the police, which could bring a significant breakthrough in the case. The victims' families also met with the prosecutor's office. This shows that they are taking this situation serious right now. The toxicology reports showed that David, Clayton, and Ricky had cocaine, fentanyl, and THC in their system. Steve Floyd, 3595, heard that Jordan is in witness protection and cutting a deal to tell on his drug dealers. If this is the case, then Jordan probably purchased the drugs from a drug dealer already laced, and investigators are gathering evidence to bust the drug dealers and charge them for the victims' deaths. To achieve a better understanding of the situation, we must ask ourselves a series of vital questions: who, what, where, when, and why, in regards to the victims being laced. By doing so, we can unravel the circumstances surrounding this case. In a statement on Friday, Elena Gonzalez, a spokeswoman for the Kansas City Police Department, told people that there have been no additional details or reports of this case revealed to any media, nor are there any plans to at this time. The case remains an ongoing death investigation. Both KCPD detectives and the Platte County Prosecutor's Office have been in touch with the deceased men's families and remain in contact with them as the investigation unfolds. Gonzalez previously told people that this still remains a death investigation and nothing more. Her statement added, "We still have no evidence or indication of foul play. No one is in police custody." Who laced the victims? Did Jordan make the laced cocaine pills or Mary J? Or did he buy laced cocaine pills or Mary J from another drug dealer? What did they lace? Did Jordan or another dealer lace the cocaine or Mary J? Did the victims take a pill, liquid, or powder form of the drug that was laced? Where did the victims get laced drugs from? According to the victims' families, Jordan allegedly gave drugs to the victims, although we don't know if he made the drugs or purchased them from a drug dealer yet. Where was the victims when they passed out? Was the victims inside of Jordan's house when they started to experience shortness of breath, or got overheated and passed out? Or was they outside already in Jordan's backyard getting some air, smoking a cigarette or smoking a joint? We know smoking can intensify the effects of drugs. When did the victims take the laced drugs? Was it before they got to Jordan's house or when they got to Jordan's house? Why was the victims laced? Was it intentional or accidental? Did Jordan intentionally make the drugs and lace them on purpose to hurt them? Or did he buy drugs from a drug dealer that wanted to hurt him? Did Jordan accidentally make a deadly batch of drugs that was too strong for the victims? Or did he buy them from a drug dealer who sells deadly drugs because they are cheaper to manufacture and stronger? How was the victims laced? Did Jordan give them drugs and they took them voluntary, or did he spike their beers?
Found dead outside of a friend's home in Kansas City 3 weeks ago after watching a Chiefs game. The police now have the toxicology reports, and they apparently show fentanyl, cocaine, marijuana in the systems of all three men. News Nation is told the amount of fentanyl is well beyond the lethal limit, not legal, but lethal, 3 times the amount. The toxicology reports were shared with family members of the 3 men, 38-year-old Ricky Johnson, 36-year-old Clayton McGinney, and 37-year-old David Harrington. After mounting pressure from family and the media, the family's furious over the lack of answers until this point. Meanwhile, the living friend, Jordan Willis, who was a tenant in the home they'd gone to, has moved out of the house, checked himself into rehab. Willis never contacting the police, despite the men being dead and frozen in his backyard for 2 days. His family calling the deaths of his friends a serious wake-up call.
Criminal charges coming? Jordan could get arrested if investigators find enough evidence to indicate that he was manufacturing or distributing deadly drugs and failed to alert authorities about his 3 friends. Jordan could also be a drug dealer who sold drugs to bigger drug dealers. If Jordan purchased the drugs from a drug dealer, the prosecutor's office will most likely pursue criminal charges for the drug dealer who sold him the laced drugs. Police have said multiple times that no foul play is suspected in the deaths, but as the mysterious case garners speculation from both the public and grieving family members who say they still don't have answers from police, legal experts weigh in on what the evidence means and how the ongoing case could proceed in a court of law. Any fentanyl in the systems of these men is pretty suspicious and suggests something bad happened to them, says Ben Trachtenberg, an associate dean and professor at the University of Missouri School of Law. He adds that if the case turns out to have a criminal component, the question is, who do you want to charge? Tragedies are not always criminal, Trachtenberg notes, and even if a crime was committed, a viable criminal case could hinge on what the remaining two men, another left early, who survived the party might know, and what they are willing to tell the police. There are a couple of possibilities of what happened here, Trachtenberg says, listing off hypothetical reasons for the men's deaths. 1, they knew they were taking drugs and something about the drugs went horribly wrong. That has certainly happened before. Public health experts blame fentanyl for the majority of overdose deaths in the United States. Oftentimes, the person unknowingly consumes fentanyl, which is sometimes laced with other drugs. Another possibility, Trachtenberg says, is that somehow these three men had drugs in their system completely unknowingly? The idea that someone slipped a drug into something they were eating or drinking is at least possible. In cases like these, Trachtenberg says state and federal prosecutors have a track record of bringing criminal charges of manslaughter. But, he warns, such cases often require someone with inside knowledge of what happened. Usually, in an ordinary drug sale, neither the buyer nor the seller has any interest in talking to the police, he said, adding, it's not likely there's an envelope hanging around with the seller's business card. Physical and digital evidence in the case is also important, Trachtenberg says. If drugs are found on the premises, they could be tested and potentially even traced back to a seller. Additionally, investigators will likely comb through phone and social media records to determine if and when calls, texts, and other messages were sent and who knew what, when.
Quote, after the shocking loss of 3 of his close friends under extremely tragic circumstances, Jordan recognized he had a problem with addiction. He immediately checked himself into rehab after vacating his home and putting his things into storage. Since the beginning of this case, police have said there are no signs of foul play. They're not investigating this as a homicide at this point, something that the families have pushed back against. Recently, News Nation interviewed the cousin of Clayton McGinney, who talked about Jordan Willis, the man whose house they'd been visiting.
A lot of times I'm hearing that David, Clayton, and Ricky were like brothers. Jordan was kind of off on the side. Mm-hmm. True?
Jordan's a chemist, bro.
Jordan's what?
Jordan's a chemist. They all knew him as that. It was easy for them to go have fun, but he made a mistake. Jordan was the chemist. He's a scientist, right? He does what he needs to do. And now, to use my cousin, my best friend, as a guinea pig?
See, that's the way the families, at least some of them, are feeling, pointing the finger directly at the other guy who was in that house. Back with me, Geraldo Rivera, Rachel Juarez, judge on TV's Hot Bench, and Jesse Weber, News Nation legal contributor. All right, Geraldo, what do you make of the families are angry?
Well, it's a tragedy. As I said 2 weeks ago on this program, this is about drugs. It was obvious to me. They thought they were doing coke. They were doing fentanyl instead. Another one of these tragic overdoses based on fentanyl. It's a tragic accident. It is what's killing every movie star that you see die under mysterious circumstances. Quietly, weeks later, they release the toxicology, and it's fentanyl in the blood. It is a scourge. It is a killer. If you want to find out who's responsible for those 3 deaths, find out who sold the scientist there, the chemist, the fentanyl, the coke that was supposed to be pure coke.
But it sounds to me like they're basically saying, I mean, at least that family member was saying, this guy was probably cooking something up there.
I agree with Geraldo. That's a possibility. I think it might be premature. Remember, we still don't have the cause of death or the manner of death report from the actual ME, the autopsy report. What I could say is who introduced the fentanyl. If we accept the possibility that it was the fentanyl that killed them all at the same time outside, and perhaps Willis himself took it as well and was knocked out, who introduced it there? Was it Willis himself? Did he know it was part of the drugs? Did he get it from a dealer? We have covered cases before where people lace drugs with these kinds of toxic byproducts, and they're brought up on criminal charges, whether it's manslaughter or something else. So I think that is the next step in the investigation. Even though they're saying it's no foul play, even though they're saying it's no homicide investigation now, that could change once they get more answers.
Rachel?
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the issue of whether or not they voluntarily ingested it, whether they knew what they were taking, and if they didn't, who was responsible for the introduction of the fentanyl into whatever they ended up taking, I think that's got to be where the police are going. And we'll see what happens from there, and then we'll get the autopsy report and see if the fentanyl contributed to the death. I mean, look, either way, it contributed. If they froze to death, it's because they took so much fentanyl that they ended up outside in a lawn chair, without Kodak.
It had to be.
So one way or another, the fentanyl.
Yeah, I mean, there's no other explanation as to how they died other than drug use, right?
Of course.
So the question is just going to be.
Well, it could be hypothermia.
Well, no, fine, hypothermia, but the only reason that they're out in the cold is because
as a result
they've been,
of being outside. Of course.
And cold and opioids work the same way. They slow your respiration. Your heartbeat slows down. Your breathing slows down. You're outside. It's below zero. At a certain point, your body doesn't support any kind of heat at all. Your temperature drops way down until your heart stops. That's what happens.
Thank you for watching.
Whether or not Jordan escapes criminal charges, the victims' families have the option to pursue a wrongful death lawsuit to get a judgment against him because the victims died at his house, and he was negligent to help them or report their deaths, and he possibly supplied the deadly drugs, although I know it's no amount of money that can take the pain away from the victims' loved ones. Thank you for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe.